Yeah, way to go. I was like, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Super exciting. Well, today, I'd like us all to consider a question, if we would. I'd like us all to consider a question that I've been asking myself the last couple months. It's an easy question, but it's a hard question to answer. And the question is, how are you doing? Really? Today, I have that question for us all, and I want to focus on the really part. Because let me be a little bit more specific. So as I take stock on the year that was 2020, everybody remember that year? As we lived through a global pandemic, I just want to be super honest with you, not that I'm not, but it was really, really hard. It was really hard. And I think we just need to give ourselves some freedom and some margin this morning to say that was a really hard year. It started out as kind of a novel experience. I mean, you think about this, like we were talking about, it's like, hey, we get to talk to our family now over Zoom. That'll be cool. That'll be something different. And then, hey, we get to have a quarantine. That'll be like a staycation. That'll be cool. And then, hey, we get to work from home. That'll be cool. Well, after the novelty of that wore off, it quickly became not fun. And for Leslie and I, it became, it's Christmas Eve. And we're both home because we're both sick. And we don't want to expose our family, so Zoom Christmas it is. Wahoo. The staycation of quarantine turned into days for both of us on the couch and a fever that took one of us to the ER. And for me, working from home quickly turned into days on days on days of in a basement in front of a computer, and you can imagine how I did with that. Like in full disclosure, Leslie was essential, so she went to work every day, so she had to deal with all that. And so through it all, me being the eternal optimist, I kept saying to myself, yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I'm getting by. And then I don't remember when, but I realized at some point that maybe I wasn't doing okay. If I could label it, we really started to feel the effects of being isolated. And for clarity, yeah, I mean, we weren't physically isolated for a year. We did get to see people, obviously. But for a lot of those times, we noticed that the times we did get to see people, it wasn't the same quality as it was before. And so instead of getting together with your friends and family and you're talking about life and you're talking about kids and your family and your job and what you're watching on Netflix, I mean, all that kind of stuff, those conversations didn't happen. Those conversations quickly turned into conversations about masks and elections and vaccines. And, I suppose there's a time and place for all of that, but if that is your sole diet of conversation, it's like eating Doritos for every meal. It's just not good for you. And I've seen some of the same tendencies in culture as a whole. Like here in Montana, here in, I think, United States, we're strong. We're an independent bunch, aren't we? We can do it. We can figure it out. We're fine. We can get by. We can handle it. Even so much so, I've been thinking about this, that when we see God say in Genesis, when we see him say in the beginning of creation, it's not good for man to be alone, I honestly wonder if there's part of our culture that says, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm doing okay. I mean, I've been isolated for a year, and I think I'm doing okay. And perhaps our culture would even take that statement further and say, I don't know that I need community. I've lived through the last year fairly isolated, and we're doing okay here on our own. And to that this morning, I want to ask a super honest question. Are you? Are you doing okay, honestly? I did some research on this topic, and I wanted to approach the research from a science and a clinical perspective. And you guys, there is so much data out there on the internet. Some of it's true, some of it's not. Duh, I'm not going to bore you with all that, but I do want to show you one piece of science, a little chart that's significant. This data, it's from the CDC, and it was published on the U.S. National Library of Medicine site. And what this is it's the number of average share of adults reporting symptoms of anxiety disorder And you can see the chart there, and depressive disorder. Now, what's interesting about this, the left bar is January through June of 2019. The right bar is January 2021. So this is, I can't remember, I'll have to look back, but it's a large group of people, a large poll, and they said January through June 2019, 11% of these folks said, yes, I'm experiencing some sort of anxiety disorder, some sort of depressive disorder. Skip ahead to January, 41%. So round numbers, the data goes from 10% to 40%. And the research concludes, kind of like the thesis statement, says this. The most common psychological disorders reported are anxiety and panic, obsessive compulsive symptoms, insomnia, digestive problems, as well as depressive symptoms and post-traumatic stress. These are not only a direct consequence of the pandemic, but also, listen to this, largely driven by the effects of prolonged social isolation. That is the objective lack of interactions with others. That's the world that we've been living in. That's the effect of the isolation that we've been living in the last year. So my question has been, as hopefully the pandemic is starting to get in the rearview mirror, our numbers are going down, which is great. What does community look like after COVID? And is there any wisdom or example we can get from the Bible? Well, as you can imagine, I mean, the Bible is full of examples of the power of community, especially in the New Testament alone. So many stories of people gathered there together, unified, but that's not where we're going to look today. We're not going to look in the New Testament. I actually want to go to the Old Testament. I want to look at a familiar story. A lot of you guys are going to know this story, but I want to look at it with the lens of community. So I want to show you a picture. Does anybody know what kind of a tree that is? I think I heard it. That is a juniper tree. Sometimes the Bible refers to that as a broom tree. I want to show you a moment in the life of one of our Bible heroes, and quite possibly it is his darkest day. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and he prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. The man in this story is named Elijah. And if you don't know his story, he was a prophet in the Old Testament. And prior to this moment in his life, he saw literal miracles. But now he's sitting underneath this sad tree trying to get shade, and he's asking God to literally take his life. So what happened? So to give you a perspective on this, we need to rewind. We need to rewind the tape. Like I said, Elijah was a prophet in the Old Testament. There's not a lot, actually there's nothing in the Old Testament about him until this moment in history. And so there was a problem in the government. What was happening is the king in that day, his name was King Ahab. And Ahab was married to a peach of a lady named Jezebel. Jezebel, she was a strong supporter of Baal. Baal was the god of the storm, the rain, and fertility. So Jezebel was such a strong supporter that out of the royal treasury, get this, she supported 450 prophets of Baal. And then if that wasn't enough, she also supported out of the royal treasury 400 prophets of Asherah. So these were not the good guys. This is not a good situation. So if that wasn't bad enough, Jezebel actually started pursuing God's people, God's prophet, and she started killing them. And so when that word got around, the other prophets started to go into hiding. And the Bible says there was about 100 of them that were in hiding. So it's a bad situation. The Israelites are now coerced into following Baal and Asherah, these foreign gods. And this is the time that Elijah bursts on the scene. Again, no mention of him in the Old Testament until this moment. He bursts on the scene and he says to Ahab, he says this, as the Lord, look at how he specifies, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. Boom. Needless to say, this didn't make old Jesse too happy, okay? So Elijah said there's not going to be any more rain, and it was true. That drought continued for 3 years. That's a long time for no rain in a land that depends on rain. So you might think, okay, he gives this word and then it's cool. No, it's not cool. He gives this word and then for 3 years he's hunted. He's hunted by Ahab and Jezebel. And so he's going into hiding. 3 years long, he's just into hiding until he's not in hiding anymore. Enough is enough. And he says, okay, a confrontation's coming. So he issued an open challenge to the prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel. Now, the interesting thing about Mount Carmel is that if you read in the Old Testament, there was once an altar to God there. I won't go into that, but there was an altar to God there that had been wrecked and destroyed and in ruins. And I think that was a picture of kind of the faith community at that point. So he told King Ahab, he says, okay, Ahab, enough is enough. Summon all 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah and bring them to Mount Carmel. So this is the picture. It's 850 versus 1. And this is Elijah's challenge. He says, each group is going to get a bull, and the object of the challenge is to burn it up. Whoever's God can build a fire and burn it up wins. So I want to pick up this story in 1 Kings 18, and we're just going to read this because this is an awesome story. So Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they, the prophets, called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted, but there was no response. No one answered, and they danced around the altar that they had made. Here comes sarcastic Elijah. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he said. Well, surely he is a god, but perhaps he's deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and must be awakened. So they shouted louder. And this is weird. They slashed themselves with swords and spears as their custom until their blood flowed. Gross. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying. So now they're prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. This is all day long. Then Elijah said to the people, come here. They came to him, and I love this line. He repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. So much symbolism there. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, your name shall be Israel. With the stones, he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 seahs of wood. He arranged the wood, then he cut the bull into pieces and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. I'm not a survival expert, but if you're going to build a fire, don't do this. He just poured water on the wood. Oh, actually, verse 34, do it again. He said, and they did it again. Do it a 3rd time, he ordered, and they did it the 3rd time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. 12 large jars of water is now soaking this whole scene. Verse 36, at the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so that these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. That is hot, hot fire. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, Yahweh, he is God. Then Elijah commanded them, seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anybody get away. They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered there. Then the best line in the whole story. You ready for this? I love this line. If this ever gets made into a movie, number 1, I want to be in it. But number 2, I love this line. Elijah looks at King Ahab, and he says this. He says, go eat and drink, for there's a sound of a heavy rain. The English Standard Version says, go eat and drink, for I think there's a storm coming. Oh my goodness, I love that line. It's just like Elijah just fully confident, fully like, yeah, just like, I think there's going to be some rain, son. Love that. So after 3 years of drought, on Elijah's word, it rained that day. Well, remember Jezebel? So King Ahab, it doesn't say the Bible doesn't say what he thought about this, it says what he did. He went home and he tells Jezzy what happened. This infuriates Jezebel, and so she sends a message directly to Elijah saying this, may the gods kill me if by this time tomorrow I have failed to take your life like those whom you've killed. That's intense, man. I don't know how you guys grew up, but in grade school, I had a bully give me the proverbial, we're going to meet at the bike rack after school. He told me that at 9 o'clock in the morning. Guess what I thought about till 3:30 that day? Stupid bike rack. She says, I'm giving you 24 hours, and if you're not dead, I'm going to be dead. You guys, think about Elijah for a second. This has got to be so hard on him because he just spent the last 3 years of his life on the run. He's been in hunting, he's been in hiding, and then he has this confrontation, this epic moment, this literal miracle, but he can't even stay around to celebrate it because Jezebel is going to have him executed. This has such an effect on Elijah, he ends up underneath a solitary broom tree asking God to kill him. That's the effect that this moment had on our Bible hero. This morning, I want to ask you, have you ever been in the spot in your life, maybe metaphorically, that you're underneath that broom tree? That things have gone so wrong, or you were expecting God to answer a prayer and he didn't answer it the way you want, and you find yourself underneath a broom tree, completely hopeless, completely void of hope, and just completely exhausted. What did God do about this? I mean, for this guy Elijah, somebody he picked out, what did he do about this? As it turns out, God's answer was giving Elijah something he desperately needed, and it's the exact same thing that you and I need today. God gave Elijah 2 new orders. He said this, he says, go anoint 2 new kings and anoint a guy named Elisha as a prophet to succeed you. So what happened there is God's answer to Elijah was people. God's answer to Elijah was community. He said, okay, the government is screwed up. I'm going to have you go anoint 2 new kings so governmentally, structurally, this doesn't happen again. Oh, and we see further in 1st and 2nd Kings that Elijah has relationship with those kings. Also, he says that's not enough. You're going to find a guy named Elisha, and he's going to be with you every waking moment. He is going to be the guy that you pass on your mantle. He is going to be the guy that will succeed you as prophet. So you have this guy Elijah that was completely by himself fighting the government, and God says, okay, I'm going to give you a community. I'm going to give you 2 new kings to set in, and I'm going to give you somebody that you're going to know very, very well. We see in the New Testament that one of God's names, actually it's in the Old as well, one of God's name is El Rahi, and that's translated as the God who sees. Let me tell you a fact this morning. God sees you. God sees you. More than that, I want to tell you that God cares about you. He knows you better than you know yourself, and he cares about you more than you would ever know. When nobody else sees you underneath that broom tree, God does. And in Jeremiah, he says that he has a plan for you, a plan for a future, and a plan for a hope. And that God of compassion, we see that compassion in the New Testament. When Jesus is in the New Testament in Matthew chapter 9, I just want to read this. Jesus traveled through all the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. He healed every kind of disease and illness. Look at this. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Of all the wording to use, Jesus used a very cultural, relevant picture. He sees the crowd and he compares them to sheep without a shepherd, which in that day was just the picture and pinnacle of hopelessness. I think maybe that's why in Jesus' last orders to his disciples, he says, therefore go and make disciples. What he was saying is, therefore go and make the church. Start the church, because the church is not a building, it is a community. It is a group of people. And Jesus says, I need to fix this. I need to create community. Therefore, go and start it. If we bring this into our life today, here at Mount Helena, if everybody showed up in this room on the same Sunday, on the same service, we'd have about 400 to 500 people in this room. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a crowd. That is a crowd of people. So my question to us all is, what is the difference then between a crowd and a community? Well, I think there's a lot of differences, but one of the foundational differences between a crowd and a community is you. One of the differences between a crowd and a community is you and your perspective. If you're on the outside, you see a crowd. If you're on the inside, you see a community. If you're on the outside of the crowd, you see a crowd. But if you're on the inside, that crowd can become a community. So then the question really becomes, how will you interact with the crowd to make it your community? And here's the honest question. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Without a doubt, I will tell you, you probably expected me to say this, but yeah, it's worth it. Because I've experienced the power of community. My clearest broom tree moment was in 2007. And 2007 was really hard for Leslie and I. We lived in Michigan. We lived there for a couple years. We went there to do an internship at a sister church for 6 months. 6 months turned into a year. And then at the end of that year, the pastor there asked if we would move to Michigan and become part of the staff. So we did. We packed up all our stuff and we moved there, and they ordained me as an associate pastor on staff there, and it was great. But in 2007, my mom passed away in January, and then we had a near church split in May that was super ugly, and then my dad passed away in September. And so I remember getting to the moment when I told God, I'm done. I'm done. I want no more of this. I'm done. And it was community that helped us through it, because I remember my birthday a couple months later, December 13th, for those of you guys keeping track. I knew it was going to be tough because my parents always called me on my birthday. And I was dreading not getting a call that year. So Leslie and I we were planning on going out to dinner together. And that time we were all about Red Lobster. And I remember this so clearly. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were just getting ready to go. And a man that I consider to be like another father, he was a pastor at the church at the time. He called me and he says, I know you guys are going out to dinner for your birthday, and we wondered if we could impose and come along to your birthday with you. And I tell you what, that made me a mess in 2007, and it still does. You guys, that's community. That's not a crowd. That's community. Community is so worth it. Sometimes we disagree. Sometimes there's friction. Sometimes it's really, really hard. But I will tell you this, that the friction and the tension makes us stronger. You can't build a muscle without tension on the muscle. And our faith is the same way. Our community is the same way. If you gave me the offer of, hey, why don't you live in community and you're never going to disagree with anybody? No, I'm out. I'm out. Because within community is resistance. And that resistance makes us stronger. And that's what I'm talking about today. So like I said, we have a lot of folks here. We have a crowd. We have a crowd of people. So how do you turn that crowd into your community, especially after COVID? Especially after the year that we've had where we're not used to living in community? How do we do it? Well, it starts with a choice. It starts with a choice to pursue community. It starts with a choice to be vulnerable. Community isn't easy. It starts with a choice, though. So here's just a few practical ways to create community. Number one is the Sunday service. So let me give you a little hack, a little tip about our Sunday service. If you want to create community, right now it's really hard when you're listening to somebody. If you want to create community, before and after the service, primo times to build community. If you like the first service, stay after. We hang out after the first service. Stay after the first service. If you like the second service, come a little early. Come a little early and just talk. Like, it's super informal. We're not going to have a presentation. There's no PowerPoint. You're not going to buy a condo, anything like that. It's super informal, but we love it. We love it. That's our Sunday services. Come hang out with us. Second one, your calendar. In my world, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen. So I would recommend to you Put a literal time on the calendar and label it whatever you want, community or time to hang out. And you might not have the person in mind yet. That's okay. You're building a structure. So you put the time on your calendar and says, you know what? I'm gonna call somebody and we're gonna do something, but now I've got the time in my calendar. It's kind of like your checkbook. You know, you show me your checkbook, I can show you where your priorities are. If you show me your calendar, I can show you where your priorities are. The last one is small groups in the fall. We're going into a free market small group, which just means whatever you want to do, let's build a group around it. So if you want to have a book study, okay. Do you want to do a hiking group? Okay. There's a lot of different things that you can do. And think about that today. Like, do you want to lead a small group in the fall? Because as we get our leaders, then we're going to publish a menu, then everybody signs up, and it's awesome. It's awesome. Do you want a bonus, number 4? Bonus? Bonus number 4. If this message, if you're saying this message, yeah, this is boring, I got it, then I'm talking to you right now. Because probably you're in community. If this is boring to you, you're in community or you're playing solitaire. If you're playing solitaire, stop it. If you're in community, I have a special challenge for you. Reach out. Reach out to those that you know, or you may have an idea that they're not in community, and do all the other stuff. Put time on your calendar that says, you know what? I know the power of community. I'm going to call this person. I'm going to email this person. We're going to meet up at the park. We're going to do something to live life together. You guys, I've been part of a men's group, a weekly men's group for the last 12 years. They've made me a better human being. They've made me a better husband and a better leader. I love those guys. But it's the power of community. You guys, we've been through a heck of a year. It's been really hard. And we've been isolated. And if you are one this morning that finds yourself sitting underneath that broom tree and you feel like you've had enough, I want to tell you that God has an answer for you. God sees you and he has an answer for you. And part of that answer is community. I am 100% convinced that we are not meant to live life alone. If it was important enough for Elijah, it's important enough for you. The question is, will you choose to engage the crowd? Will you choose to be vulnerable? Will you choose to make time and put yourself out there to experience the power of community? Let me pray for us this morning. God, thank you that the church was your idea, Lord, that the church was never, ever a building, but it was always a group of people, Lord. And I pray for us, Father. I pray for Mount Helena Community Church, that as we come out of isolation, Lord, that we would understand and value and appreciate and make time for community, that we would make time for one another, that we would live life in community, God, because you said it's not good for us to be alone. And so, Lord, I just pray a blessing on us today, Father. I pray that we are salt and hope and light to a city that desperately needs it, Father. Thank you for your Son. Thank you for everything that you've done for us. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.